Hello, everyone. My name's Jamie, and I'm a founder at Freely Give. And I've been working a lot about AI, to do with AI in the Drupal community. And I've reached out to Jay or Drupalninja, who will introduce himself in a bit. And we thought we're going to talk a bit about what we've been doing in Drupal, what we're excited about. And this is the first time we've spoken, but we thought it'd be fun just to record it, maybe throw it out there, see what you think about it, see if you can benefit from it in any way. Freely Give is uh, a company I founded, and we've been focusing on native Drupal CRM. And I've been obsessed with AI in the last year and a half. And recently, we've done a lot with the AI module. So that's been our big thing, particularly at Drupal Dev Days recently. So Jay, I'll hand over to you.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I'm glad you reached out. I've seen a little bit of what you've done online. I watched a little bit of video of you speaking, and so I'm interested to really dig into stuff you're working on with Freely Give. But I thought I would just kind of dig into my background and experience a little bit, and so I'm just going to opine for a bit, but feel free to interrupt. And then I definitely want to learn about what you're doing as well. So
Yeah.
just to tell you a little bit about my background, I've been working in Drupal for a really long time. I think I looked it up this morning, 18 years working with Drupal. So, and most of that is my whole career. So I've been in the agency space working on enterprise solutions, and Drupal's just been a passion of mine for a long time, just in general, just like web development. So
Mhm.
AI is kind of my newest thing. So similar to you, it's like it really sparked my interest, and so that's been fascinating to me. Like ChatGPT came out, and I started playing around with it, and I was immediately hooked on it. And if you remember in the early days, it was like real unstable and all this stuff. But I loved playing around with ChatGPT. I was using it for everything, and I was very interested in seeing how it could handle coding. So played around with that. Then so I'm kind of giving you the whole beginning to current day here.
Yeah.
So did that. Uh, GitHub Copilot came out. I really liked that. I've been using that kind of ever since, or similar tools. So I started really liking that. That was helping me in kind of day to day coding stuff. And but before I go too much further, I want to set the expectation that like I'm not a machine learning LLM expert. I've
Yeah.
listened to some stuff you've talked about, and it's some of it's over my head because some of the advanced concepts are just like over my head. And I'm not that much interested in how the like sausage is made or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's interesting. It's definitely a different skill set, and I appreciate people who can understand all that. To me, where I come in is like once I uncovered like the APIs were really easy to work with,
Hmm.
I was like, oh, I can use this. I can leverage this because I'm a web developer. I'm an application builder, and so I know that space, and I'm just treating it like an API. So I've tried to catch on to some of the main concepts, and I'm like slowly learning some of that, some of the terminology and all that stuff. I think it's important for people to at least try to learn some of those basics, but that's not where my interest lies. My interest lies in like, hey, this API is just this very simple prompt response system. You send it stuff, it does some magic, and it sends back stuff. And like, how can I use this to make code? So that's where I've been playing around with it. I did a really early proof of concept like over a year ago, where I was taking one of the very early OpenAI models and seeing if I could generate something that looked like a full unit of code. So I had it
Hmm.
write like a module and configuration and even like a theming integration. So this was like a really rough early prototype, but I was able to kind of cobble something together that looked like a decent proof of concept. And so I'm like, okay, this has potential here. And then I left it alone because I was busy with other stuff. And so I didn't really do a lot of experimentation um, for most of last year through this year. Now this year I've been in the middle of a career change. And so I've had a little bit more time to invest in a couple of my side projects. And so I've got this Drupal X starter that I've worked on. I have a lot of interest in like your Drupal starter kind of space. But
Yeah.
yeah, it started being like, I want to, we have all these good tools like with Drush that will generate boilerplate code. And okay, people are familiar with that. Sometimes those can be a real time saver. It's like, okay, I want to, it asks you a couple questions and it spits out some good boilerplate. And I'm like, well, why couldn't we have something like that with the AI models tied in? So I started working on that, having a lot of fun with that. And that's when I started sharing some of what I was working on LinkedIn. I've got a YouTube channel that nobody watches, but I was posting stuff on LinkedIn and people were liking it. And so I'm like, okay, this is cool. This is something. It's fun engaging with people about it and having fun with it. So yeah, I've been working on that, having it do like module generation or like theme component generation and doing all that kind of stuff. And then more recently, even just like a week ago, excuse me. So even just like a week ago, I was looking for YouTube content around the holiday and just being like, okay, let's see what people are doing. And I found a video on this guy who created a Claude engineer uh, GitHub project. And so it runs on Python and it's a simple kind of chat interface. And I was looking at that and like the script overall is actually pretty simple. I was like, I could actually understand what was going on in there, even though I'm not like a Python guy.
Yeah.
And I liked his approach a lot better. I'm like, okay, I'm doing a full rewrite on this. So that's what I've been doing lately. And I like it better. And so now the Drupal AI stuff is doing more like a chat prompt things, and it's got like a little auto mode. But the big piece that I was just missing, just because I didn't know, I'm like learning on the fly here, is function calling.
Mm.
So that's a little bit more advanced than just the prompt and response, but not too much more. And I'd heard references to function calling, and I didn't really know what it meant. I thought it was maybe, it's some advanced thing that I don't have access to. Well, actually, it's not that bad. You're sending some information about your kind of local function calls to a model,
Mm.
and then you can either tell it to, hey, use this specific function, or you can have it kind of automatically try to figure out which function to use. And so an example would be a function that creates files. And so it's like, okay, well, send me an array of files with file name and contents. And so that was much better than what I was doing. I was doing something much more crude where I was just having it give me like XML or some sort of structured thing that I could parse. And so I'm like, okay, this is much better. I like the techniques. He had a search API integrated, which I like. And so I'm like, this is going to be a much better tool, a little bit more open-ended than just, hey, previously I was thinking I'll just have some kind of a menu of different drush commands in that I'll, fetch certain things and arrange it in a certain way. But the chat interface I like better. And so been doing that, having fun with that. And so all of that kind of leads me to this thesis that I have, which is that, okay, so we know like Copilot and these different AI assisted tools can help you. They can help you be a little bit more efficient, help you with syntax, so on and so forth, right? I think that's been proven pretty well over the past year. Like these
Mm.
tools are pretty helpful. My thesis is that you can build more complete solutions. So I'm kind of working my way towards like a full application. That my thesis is that it can like potentially empower one person to do the work of the team. And so, it's still I've done enough proof of concepts where I can see the vision. Like there's
Mm.
some, technical barriers and things along the way, but I'm like, I feel like it can do that. And so I'm working on this chat stuff. A lot of it is sort of more on the proof of concept, you know, piece, but I feel like we could get to a place where it's actually doing real work, not just
Mm.
like, hey, these are fun demos to share, but like this could actually help me accomplish some big set of tasks that would have taken me a lot longer. That's kind of the thesis I'm working with. And yeah, so I'm just really, it's got me thinking a lot of like, okay, I worked at an agency a long time. No matter where you work, if you work in a development team, I'm just thinking, how much of all this stuff that we're doing could be automated? How much
Yeah.
of it could be delegated to AI? And so, it's just got my mind kind of racing and thinking about a lot of things, and it's just been, you know, it's been kind of a journey to kind of see where this leads us, and so it's just a very fascinating topic. So I've opined on a lot of stuff. You can comment on any of that, and then I'm also very interested to know what you're doing.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you mentioned something about some of my videos. So have you seen a few of them before, or any of the things I've talked about with Drupal and AI, or?
Well, I sort of scanned through some, like, for example, like you were talking about LangChain and stuff like that. And so I'm like, okay, I don't really know much about LangChain. And I sort of understand it a little bit. So the first mention I think was I listened to an AI podcast on the is it Thinking Drupal? I forget what it's called. The or man, I hate that I don't know the name off the top of my head, but there's that Talk Drupal or whatever.
Yeah.
Talking Drupal, okay, yeah, mangling the name, but so I listened to that whole thing, and they covered a bunch of topics, and I think they covered stuff that you have been working on, and so that's what led me down the path to look into some of the stuff that you've worked on. So I know a little bit, but you'll still need to catch me up. And I'm like, I definitely was like, well, you're definitely operating on a higher plane of understanding than I am. Mine's much more simple, but yeah, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've noticed with the stuff you're doing is it feels like you're working very much in the code space. So, what can you do with code, command line, Drush commands? It's like your dream seems to be like really powerful tools in Drush that will empower a Drupal developer to do things very quickly, or do the really the somewhat simpler stuff but fast. So I saw that thing about taking like an image and creating storybook code. That was really cool. And then you could see if you can do that first step, it's not going to be long before people have. I mean, with Midjourney already, you can generate like designs, whole website designs, just with a prompt. It's not perfect yet. It's obviously they're not as good as an actual, Photoshop or Figma design. Things get a bit weird sometimes, but I can see how like you're looking at all the steps that you could go from typing in some prompt, getting it into code, etc. And then I think our focus has been not at developers. So it's like, how can we get the things that are really cool in AI, all this complicated stuff to do with LangChain that will mean nothing to anyone else, but do something like that naturally feels like you're doing that. But you're doing it in a very intuitive way in Drupal as just an end user who is a site builder, probably can't write any code. And you're just thinking like, oh, I want to summarize something. What do I want to summarize? Oh, it's the stuff I've scraped from a website. Oh, now I've summarized it. I want to take that summary and turn it into a picture, maybe. I don't know. But you can have these steps, these chains, but you're not thinking about it in terms of chains and normalizing data and everything that's complicated. You're just simply building it. So I feel like that's kind of the angles that seems like you've been moving in this direction that's very code heavy. And our goal is being moving in a direction that's very not code heavy. And it does mean that there's certain kind of things that you can build quickly in your space if you're focusing on a developer, and our thing is more, what would an end user want to do? So like, yeah, when we talk about, and the first thing that I actually did like a year and a half ago was I'm not a programmer anymore. I did some coding when I was 16. I was using VB script. At the time, CSS was like the cool new thing everyone was talking about, which I didn't want to understand. I liked my table-based layouts back then. I met Andrew, who's my business partner. We co-founded Freely Give together when he was like 17, and we sort of built little sites together for like local churches or video game stuff. And that's how Freely Give grew out of that. But very quickly, I found if I had an idea of something to build, he'd be able to build it faster than me, and all my coding disappeared. But the first module I built was with ChatGPT 3.5. As I called it a newspaper module, and all it was a module that created an entity with a single field, which was like number of pages. And that took me a while. It didn't get there. Get it perfectly. It was like constant errors, copy and pasting the errors. Okay, but I did it. So I made a module for the first time in ages. So that was the first thing I tried to do. I tried to make a video game with Unreal, and so I tried to make a video game that was just going to have like wavy water in it. It was on a phone, and I'd tap the screen, and a fish would swim to my finger, and I'd tap it again, it'd swim off. Trying to get the water to work, that took me days, and I couldn't get there. So that didn't quite work out. But from a lot of these ideas, what we're doing now grew out of it, of like really focusing on end users. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that helps answer some questions, because I was curious. So you formed an agency around some of these ideas. It sounds like yeah, everybody has a passion for like the AI stuff.
Well, no, not really.
Or is that
No, so our agency really founded out of CRM. So we actually started in the charity/church space. So a lot of our clients were that, and we quickly needed a native Drupal CRM. So we're finding that there were a lot of pain points on trying to integrate with CRM, especially when you had a CRM that had a lot of data in it that the end users would be inputting themselves, rather than the staff in the organization. So it wasn't really CRM. It wasn't like Salesforce style CRM. It was more like online directories where you're a charity and you overlook a whole bunch of organizations in your space. So one of our clients is called Clinks, and they work with offenders, ex-offenders, probationary things. And they have a directory of offender services, which is like everything across the UK that's to do with that. And we built this directory, but instead of the Clink staff updating it, we allowed the organizations themselves to be able to update those things. And what we found is with CRMs, they were really focused on staff processes. But by making a native Drupal CRM, people could log in and change things themselves. There were really nice UIs for it. And we got really into the rail industry. So we built a delay repay system. So it's a whole complete thing for a train operating company. Your train's delayed, so you upload your ticket. Our system calculates how delayed you were, how much money you should get, gives it back, customer service tools, fraud stuff. Very complex, big business application tool. And we did this a while back with no automation. And our cool thing was that like the systems at the time, it would take like on average half an hour to process a claim and maybe 2 hours. And we brought it down to like 5 minutes on average and then half an hour for more complex ones because Drupal allowed us to build these really, really cool UIs that were very streamlined compared to Dynamics. And then we kept doing automation and we lost to our competitors a little bit due to the automation. But when AI came along, we really found the way that we built everything, it meant that we could do AI-based automation really, really well. And that was really exciting. And that was where we really built something that we could actually sell to people, where we could show a whole end-to-end process where AI deals with some of the stuff that humans needed to do. And we made some evaluations. I really focused on testing it and proving it. And so we loaded loads of some previous, carefully curated previous claims. And then we were able to loop through those with AI and compare the two. And found we could get like 90% automation with like 100% accuracy for some claims. Close to 95% accuracy for where it said no, which is similar to what humans are at. So that was really cool to see AI could actually drop in and replace a human to some degree or a team of people. So then we started building out our tools on like, okay, can we make this faster? Can we make it quicker for us to build things, quicker for us to evaluate things, quicker for us to test things, swap out different models? At the time, ChatGPT was the only one that was worth doing, but now open source has got a lot better. Claude is really good. Mistral's really good if you're in Europe and you're not speaking English. So yeah, that's how we started. And then I felt like I looked at these, what I call AI orchestration. Does that mean anything to you?
Kind of. Is that like the auto GPT stuff or?
So orchestration is like the thing in the center of your app that does everything with AI. So almost what you're doing with your Drupalninja stuff is building your own orchestration tool. It's like you're building it into Drush. It's like the thing that you're going to interact with in some way. And then it goes to all the LLMs, it goes to all the services, and then does something useful out of it. And what we're finding is that ChatGPT on its own with chat.openai.com is pretty good. But if you're going to do any AI applications, you need something that sends information to LLMs, gets it back, and then does something with it. Even if it's just, putting it into a chat window, or it's got some, you can log in and it's got some permissions behind it. And so LangChain and stuff, they are sort of orchestration tools. If you're using the function calling and plugins in ChatGPT, you can use ChatGPT, make a GPT, and you're using ChatGPT to be the orchestration to call ChatGPT, because you can set up things with GPTs to do stuff. But what we found is everything is either proprietary, it's either very code heavy, very complicated to get up and running. And if it's no code, it's very simple when it comes to all the additional functionality. So flow-wise, really cool for building like chat windows, chatbots, but it doesn't have what Drupal does with things like the user integration, the permissions, views, working with a web shop automatically being able to implement things on the content. It's very limited to just doing these chatbots. So I really strongly believe that Drupal will be a really powerful orchestration tool that will allow anyone to build AI applications. And I think there isn't that much out there. And that's why we found Marcus, who, he's not here for this call today, but he was not a Drupal, he was a Drupal developer a long time ago, but he came to Drupal because he tried to use LangChain, found it difficult, and thought, actually, with Drupal, it's already got loads of things like it can build web pages, it can make a view that you can export to Excel, it can do all these things already. So he started working on the what he called the interpolator module, and now it's going to be automators. That was like taking the cool stuff in LangChain, but doing it in a Drupal-y way. So yeah, that's
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, that makes sense to me. And I remember on the podcast them talking about stuff Marcus was doing, and I think some of it sounded similar to some POCs that I was doing. And so yeah, that's a really fascinating space. And then the train thing that you're talking about is very interesting. Have you done like a case study?
Yeah, we have. So we've got a case study on our website, not the AI stuff, but we're going to give a talk at Drupal Con Barcelona. And I'm giving it's in the case study tracked. So I'm going to give a talk about that and lay out the case study there.
Yeah. I'll be very interested to look at that. That'll be great. It'll be interesting to see more of that sort of thing, maybe at Drupal camps, Drupal cons, things like that. I wasn't at the last one, so I wasn't at this year's. I think they had more AI content. Last year, the timing wasn't right because all the ChatGPT fever came after sessions were already submitted. So anyways, I'm just, it's really going to be like eye-opening for those of us who haven't thought there's so many things you can do. It's hard to get your mind wrapped around all the things that are possible. And so you need to see case studies, hear from people's experience, how they're able to take something like the way you laid out the problem in the solution is really, really good. So it'd be neat to see some of the kind of under the hood, what's happening or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm feeling like with the AI talks that I'm both giving and listening to is, 2023 was the time to talk about what an embedding model is, how LLMs work, how neural network works, like what is the core stuff underneath it. Talking about prompt engineering, like the theory behind prompt engineering. Like 2023 was all about these underlying tools, about how you could build things. And I'm feeling this shift where people are getting a bit bored of that now, and they're interested in, yeah, but what have you done that's useful? Like, what's useful, and how can you prove it's useful? Because, I gave a talk about embeddings and RAG and how we can use AI to talk to your database, but we haven't seen Amazon switch to using AI as the only way that you search for products yet. Google tried to do it, and maybe it's working, but it's had a lot of big failures. I even heard from someone who their wife was an actual GP, an actual doctor, and somebody came in who was pregnant and said, okay, I've started smoking now, as you all recommend. I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, I went to Google, and it told me that, pregnant women, that the science says pregnant women should smoke. And it was right at the top of Google, and she thought it was like a new NHS advice. It's so complicated because, if you go to ChatGPT now, most people are using it, know it will hallucinate, and they know the concept of it.
Right.
But if you go to google.com, and the first thing it tells you is you should smoke, some people could laugh at that person themselves being like, oh, why are you trusting that? But it's like, no, we've actually been trained that what you see at the top of Google is likely from an authoritative source. Especially from COVID, they put a lot of effort to making it so that COVID misinfo wasn't there. And the negative of that is that you start training people to believe that governments are involved in this because they were. Health services are involved in this. So what you see on Google is likely to be correct at the top. That particular place where the AI assistance was like the most authoritative. And then when I see the search results, I'm not going to trust it as much. And so the problem is they did that. So we're finding that with this stuff to do with using AI to search through things, I'm seeing a lot of examples of people doing something that could be cool, but not yet. It's actually just better than search. It's people will rather use the AI bot to find your products than the traditional way. So I think, people are moving towards wanting to see real cases. People are actually finding it useful, and people are using it on their day-to-day life to actually change the way they do things with evidence, rather than here's this cool demo that could work. So yeah, we still don't have a huge number of those cases. I think the train one is a very cool one. And my goal at the moment is to find more places where I can like build something and prove it works somehow. People want to use it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I agree. So speaking of day to day, like how can it help me day to day? So one of the questions I had was, and I'm admittedly looking at it through the developer lens. You've got kind of a broader thing of looking at it more like, from all sides, including like the customer experience and all that stuff. But I'm curious, just looking at it through the developer lens, how do you think the day to day is going to change, if at all, with the advances in AI and all that stuff? Do
Yeah,
you have an opinion?
it's difficult to know. So in the early days with Copilot, our developers looked at it and they weren't that happy with it. They didn't find it was that useful. I've got a few friends who are using it, who are programmers who are using it every single day. They love starting from the outline that AI gives you, and then we work on there. I think the thing is that what this is doing is I think what a lot of people are doing is move the problem space from writing the code to getting good at telling AI what to do and then debugging it. And I think from the people I'm speaking to, it's giving you like 10, 20% improvements. Whereas when you look at the way that we're using AI, not as a developer, but like in the claims management space, for example, there's this thing which we're calling them primitives. Like, what are the basic things that AI is really good at? That if you have a need for this, you can put in AI and it will almost certainly help you. And one of the things that we find is taking unstructured data and putting it into structured data.
Yeah.
So anything is unstructured. This conversation, a random website, an image. And why that is unbelievably powerful is there's loads of things that we as programmers and agencies, there were just problem spaces we left alone, we ignored because it's just too hard. Regex kind of works sometimes, really easy to break. OCR, I mean, even when we build our stuff with AI, a lot of people will smugly tell me that this is a waste of time because OCR could do it. But it just couldn't. Like OCR it just breaks so often in really small places, orientation. It kind of does things right, but in very specific cases. Whereas AI just out of the box, when you use a mixture of OCR plus AI, really powerful at taking things and putting it into your structure, whatever you want to make it work. I don't have to rebuild a whole new API to connect to this new OCR tool or, Zendesk or Salesforce. I can just make it go to mine by using AI. And it gets it right a lot when it's just taking these things out and putting it somewhere, much less likely to hallucinate. So I suppose one thing is that we as developers are going to do way more stuff. There's way more, as people wake up to this, there's way more things we as developers can do. And the thing is, that's not like a 10 to 20% increase. That's like a 10 times increase.
Wow.
It's not 100%. It's not infinite. You do find that AI does get it wrong. You're going to need to build tools to check what AI has done somehow. But you can go into a place where people have been manually reading these documents, like loads of legal documents or PDFs, to put things into databases. They've been trying to use ML to do it or something. And you'll be able to suddenly 10x your productivity and the speed at which you can do things. And there's a few places where I think AI is really, really powerful. I don't think we're there yet as AI is your personal assistant or even as a programming tool to literally 10x the speed at which you can develop things. We're close. I think we're getting there. The stuff that you're working on the prototypes, and at some point that stuff is going to be so good that it could 10x what you do. Yeah. But that's my feeling is it's like it's slightly good now and it's a good thing to build upon. It's like a good practices to work on so that when the models get good enough, you'll suddenly find yourself way faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're getting better by the day. Like you mentioned the Claude, and I've been really happy with that. I'm getting a chance to play around with a lot of models and see how they do. And I'm very interested to know about or to see which ones do well at low cost. Because I'm doing a lot of just development discovery. It's like I don't want to spend a lot of money on credits or whatever. But even the Claude Haiku model is like really good for being as cheap and fast as it is. And so, and certainly their most powerful, the 3.5, what's it called? Opus, or can't remember. I mix up the names. their 3.5 model is
Yeah.
really solid. So yeah, yeah. So I'm focused on the developer space, but it makes sense the way you're saying is like in the kind of problem business logic space. It's like ready right now to really give some big gains in like how businesses work and the train. We have the train example versus just as a 20-year developer, I'm very interested to see this thing through, which is can it 10x the developers output or whatever. We see all this. We see proprietary solutions. You like mentioned that earlier, and so I'll see ads, and all of them have like slick demos, and they're like, I'm sure there's like a lot of like well-funded startups and all that stuff, but you know how much of that is real? It's hard to tell. And what's nice is since we have access to all the models themselves are very accessible because
Mm.
APIs, some of them are free and getting or near free and getting cheaper and better all the time. So if they're not free now, they're like basically free, especially depending on what your use case is. Like learning them is real easy. And so I'm optimistic that in the open source space, we can figure out how to leverage these tools to really improve the gains of the developer. And so, yeah, I mean, there's just so many applications everywhere for this technology. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. I think one way I use it personally on a day-to-day basis, it's not so much a programming thing, but I find it really good for learning. So like I did physics with philosophy, so I didn't do programming. And I was good at physics, I was bad at philosophy, but I loved the philosophy. The philosophy was the fun bit for me. The physics was where I could pass exams. And then when you do philosophy, you sit there reading this really complicated text. And I remember the first time I read some like Greek philosophy, it was like every other word I had to look up in a dictionary. I had no idea what was going on. I remember reading Locke, and I was like reading through this thing, and each like line was so hard to get my head around. So I'd spend like 10 minutes on a single sentence, and it would be like, this is an argument, this is an argument, this is an argument. So each sentence was like a little thing. And then I found out the guy was just repeating himself over and over and over again. But it would take me 10 minutes to be like, oh, okay, he's already said that. Okay, move on. Okay, he's already said that. So difficult. And the main way you learn is you read yourself, and then you went to tutorials and you spoke to other people who are your level, chatting about it, and you just talk about it to try and understand it. And then you would get a PhD student who knew more than you, but they were a PhD student. They weren't hadn't written books. They weren't professors. They weren't experts, and they would help you, guide you through it. So the PhD students still were quite expert, but you weren't really speaking to like the lecturers that often. You weren't speaking to the people who were truly authoritative that often. It's only until you were doing a PhD yourself that you were going to that level. So when I look at how I have to understand things, a lot of the time I'm reading a textbook and I just can't understand this sentence, or I can't understand how that works with that. And AI is really good at taking two concepts and comparing them. Like I remember the first thing was, summarize the difference between sympathy and empathy. I was doing like a therapy course at the time and learning about these things. And it was really good at like showing you the nuanced difference between those two things and giving you examples. Or copy and paste whole bits of like a textbook. I was trying to learn about like prompt engineering, and I had all these courses and they were academic papers and it didn't make any sense. So I'd copy and paste it. And there were some that were like prompt engineering techniques that would go into the person building the model. But it wasn't very clear to me that this wasn't actually for me. So I was like, oh, is this going to work? And I asked it, and it would tell me, yeah, you probably won't be able to use this. So all these things I found really useful on a daily basis. I find I go to ChatGPT more than Google. Google's now my, I'm too lazy to type in a URL, so I type in the name of the thing and it gives me the URL of that company. That's the main purpose of it. Or to search Reddit. That's the other reason why I use Google. But for any kind of things I'm exploring, I usually find AI is more useful to help me like, why does this work? Why does this person say that? So that's been like my daily basis. But yeah, it's not very developer focused.
Well, it really does seem like, to me, the ChatGPT is largely replacing what you would use search for. That's been the theory, which is why it's curious that Google was kind of flat-footed initially to not have something. But, they're a big company, they're catching up. But yeah, I use ChatGPT for answers. I mean, I use it just all the time for a lot of stuff. And I've actually found that it's weird, but I found that YouTube is more helpful for searching for things,
Yeah.
and which is kind of counterintuitive. It's like, well, it's just a bunch of videos, but Google is just so much ads trying to push commercial things on you. So now it's like, oh, I want to find, is there a product or a piece of software that does XYZ? Or like there's a lot of things that people like related to streaming that think, there's just lots of information on like how to do things or which product is the best or whatever. Like when you search in YouTube, I'll find videos that like are exactly what I want, which is like comparing, like a lot of times, let's say you want to find out like there's some free tools that will solve whatever problem you're trying to solve. And but you won't find that in Google. In Google, you just find a bunch of products that they're pushing. Versus in YouTube, you'll find a 5-minute video that explains you your options and the pros and cons and all that stuff. So I found that's interesting. Like the whole search experience has really been upended in recent years, where it's just not what it once was, and I think what we have now is better.
Yeah, I actually heard from someone. I don't know. I'm unfortunately getting old with this kind of stuff, and I don't really use TikTok. But I've been told that for the next generation, they don't tend to use Google to find a restaurant. They tend to use TikTok. I mean, I don't even know you can search in TikTok. I've tried to use it a bit, and it doesn't make any sense to me. But I've been told that a lot of people are using TikTok as a replacement to search, to recommend products, places to go, things to do, how to do things. So yeah, I think that's changing. I mean, one of the things that was quite cool that we did with Interpolator is we found we could quite easily, again, no code, download a YouTube video, transcribe it, and then do things with AI. And so one of the downsides of YouTube is that if you want to find out what's in a video, you have to watch the whole thing. I mean, you can double the speed of it, but it still takes a while to watch the whole thing. So being able to like, one thing about AI is being able to like get a whole bunch of videos, have it transcribed, and then do some analysis on it really quickly to then go to the bit of the video you want to see. I think is quite a powerful use case, particularly in enterprise research projects, etc., for using AI.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you can pass a video to an AI model and it can understand it.
Yeah. So you can't just do that. But like, and at some point, the AI is going to be good enough at that. Is when the multimodal videos come out, it will be good enough at that. But what we found is with Drupal, using the AI interpolator module, you set up an entity. One of the fields is URL, and then the next field is the transcription. Then you enable AI interpolator, and you enable the YouTube downloading automator thing that it's a module you can download. Download the video, then the next stage will be like transcribing it. So there's another tool that can watch a video and transcribe it. And it can tell you like speaker A, speaker B. It obviously doesn't know who they are, but speaker A, speaker B. Okay. So the next thing you can do is have something that who the speakers are, you tell it. So you can say speaker A is X, Jamie, the other one's J. And now you have a transcription of your whole video. So then the next stage in it is you make a field, which takes that transcription and says, can you make a summary? And you can just type that in, press a button, and then that will then output a field. Or you can make it so that it gets the key points, creates LinkedIn posts, creates a blog post from that video. You can do it where you're taking a whole bunch of videos. And one of the ideas somebody told me was they want to know if the video they've got has real thought leadership. So let's say we got a little AI podcast. That's my one. I put it in and I go, have I said anything really cool? And I download 20 videos from all the thought leaders who I think that is recent, or maybe it's 100. Put them all in. And then use AI to compare. Did the things I talk about, does it appear all the time in those things? So that was like a little use case of something you could do, because I think so much stuff is in video and AI will help us extract that. I mean, this is cool in Drupal at the moment, but almost certainly this is going to be one of those things that like Google will do, just to have a chatbot that has just transcribed everything in YouTube and then can use search to like find a similar thing to the thing you're talking about. And then probably it won't use a chatbot. It will be like your talk to your mic and be like, I'm looking for this. And it will just find you videos. I mean, that's going to happen. But for now, Drupal can help you do that and then do all the steps. So that was quite cool.
That's great. And chat is so good with summaries. I mean, that is one of its like superpowers where you don't have to worry so much about the hallucination kind of stuff. I mean, I feel like, I mean, it's going to nail summaries pretty well. It can take, you can give it a whole article, give it a whole, and you can get the summary exactly the length that you want it. It's pretty incredible. So yeah, I mean, we're discovering new use cases just like all the time. It's fun. It's also kind of overwhelming.
Mm.
Um, one of the questions I had for, I guess for you, is there any, are there are there any tools out there that need to be on people's radars that have caught your attention? There's new tools coming out all the time, some free, some paid. I don't really have anything off the top of my head. I was curious if there's any sort of tool that you've encountered that is of the level of, like we use ChatGPT all the time. Like, is there some tool that you find yourself either using or want to use, anything like that?
Well, obviously, there's the fantastic Drupal AI module that's been recently released, and that's like the greatest tool that's ever existed, and everyone should always use it for everything. I don't know, actually. I think in the early days last year, it was that. Like, there was this new tool coming out, and you had to use this thing and try that out. The core modules are so good. Like, yeah, Claude is really cool. So that's the thing that I think everyone should try and use. Try and use artifacts. Have you seen artifacts that Claude can do?
No.
So artifacts is, so you know that obviously with what you're doing, you know that these LLMs, they can produce code. So, and you know that with ChatGPT, they do something called code interpreter, where like if they have a complicated problem it can't solve, like maths, it's very bad at, it will write the Python for you and run it in a Jupyter notebook on the OpenAI servers, and then give you the answer of this very simple Python script. And so Claude's gone one step further, where it will then it will take all the code it's written and render it in the browser for you. So you can ask it to do something, and it will write all the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then show it to you. And then you can keep talking to it, and it will build this almost mini application inside the browser as you're doing it. And people have made whole video games. I saw someone make a piano, like using JavaScript. It created a whole piano inside Claude, where you could press the buttons and it would do songs, but also then you could get it to play songs. You could get it to like play, some classical thing. And inside the browser it did all of this. That's super cool. Yeah, I
Is
think
that what artifacts is?
they call it artifacts, yeah.
What is it's an application? Like what
It's just in Claude. If you just go to Claude, I think you have to pay for it, so you have to use Sonnet or something. But it's in
like
Claude.
on the website you've done the tool? Okay.
Yeah. And I've seen some crazy things that people built. They built like this really cool holiday planner tool. That was the scariest thing I've seen in a while since ChatGPT came out. When I looked at it, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm losing my job again. Every time these things come out, I'm like, my company's going to die.
It's just got like a cloud environment where it'll just execute the code and...
Yeah, well, it runs. I think all the code actually runs in your browser because it's HTML and JavaScript. It's all writing the code and putting it in your browser. So it's not. I don't think it does any server-side stuff. I don't know enough about it. I haven't tried it enough. I've just seen videos of it. And then obviously I'm very excited for, if the voice model ever comes out with OpenAI. That's really exciting to me. But I don't know in terms of actual tools that you should use on a day-to-day, but there's so many of them now. And there's not been that many that have really jumped out as like, this is super important like it was back in the day. LM Studio, that's really good. Have you played around with LM Studio at all? That's fantastic. That's probably the best tool, actually. So LM Studio is a desktop application. You can download it on Windows, Linux, Mac, and it runs, allows you to run open source models on your machine. But the UI is so easy to use. Like, it's so easy to find them.
Ollama.
Yeah, so it's like Ollama. Ollama is what we're going to eventually support in the AI module, and it is going to be better than LM Studio because it is all open source. But LM Studio is proprietary. And it's just easier to use than Ollama. But if you're using Ollama, there's no reason to use LM Studio. But LM Studio just does everything for you, really quick and easy to use, and then it pretends to be OpenAI. So when we built an application for OpenAI with Drupal, we could run something on LM Studio, point it at LM Studio, and it would just do it on Meta's Llama. So it's really, really quick. Even compared to Ollama, the speed at which you can download models, try them out. It's got a little chat window. You can expose it as a server. That's really cool for developing things if you're going to try and do in-house stuff.
Yeah, I'll try that. So I've liked Olama. It's been, and I was initially integrating Olama, but it doesn't seem like they have function calling as far as I could tell. And so I was like, well, may have to pause that sort of thing. Plus the fact that, at least on a laptop, you can only run kind of your less powerful models.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, it's cool that you can run some of these models that are pretty decent. Like I found Code Gemma,
Yeah.
however you pronounce the Gemma, the Google tool, like it came up with pretty good stuff. And so I really wanted, if it introduced function calling, I think I would revisit that. But for now, I've kind of paused on that, and I'm just focusing on all the web-based APIs. But yeah, that's a good recommendation, the LLM Studio.
Yeah, I actually have a few other ones. So Grok, GROQ.com. They are, have you heard of it?
Yeah, I saw it. I think I saw it because I was looking for Grok with a K,
Yeah.
which is the,
Very
the
different.
Twitter X thing. And then I was like, oh, but then it looks interesting because it can run Llama 3 and some other models, and for maybe cheap. So
the thing is that obviously you can run a LLM on your CPU, and that's the slowest. You can do it on a GPU, and that's faster. What Grok has done is customize the chip themselves. I don't fully understand how they've done it, because there's another company that's really gone far with making a completely custom chip. But Grok has customized the chips themselves, so you can just run things unbelievably fast. So you can get the biggest Llama 3 70B model, and it's faster than like even ChatGPT. So quick. So that's their big thing that Grok's done. So that's been really cool.
Is it running it remotely or on your machine?
Yeah. Yeah, so they've got these. I mean, I think you can buy their cards, maybe, if you're enterprise level, but they'll still be very expensive. They'll be like hundreds of thousands. And then the other thing, I think, is Llama Index. I haven't done it much myself, but Llama Index is like, I think, what the cool kids are going to after LangChain. So LangChain was, a lot of people are anti-LangChain now, and Llama Index is the cool thing. And that's where I've seen the really cool AI search. Something called agentic search or modular RAG. Agentic RAG or something. There's all these weird terms I don't fully understand yet. But my next research project is to really understand Llama Index, because it really does feel like they're at the cutting edge of how you can use AI to do search and get actually good answers that are testable in ways. So I've started working my way through their video tutorial. It's really good. The steps, I think it's not that hard to use. So I would say, I think for most people now, you probably can ignore LangChain and go straight to Llama Index for things that you want to do.
Yeah, I'll check that out. Yeah, that's good. See, you do have some recommendations.
Yeah, I just have a couple.
Well, I know we're kind of coming up on our hard stop here. We could probably talk about AI things all day long and never stop, but we'll definitely have to catch up again sometime. I think this has been a fun conversation. I've learned a lot here in just a little bit. And so any final words or anything like that before we wrap up?
I suppose a couple of plugs is, the Drupal project /AI is where we are. We're on Slack, Drupal Slack. #AI is a big place if you want to come and talk to us about what we're doing. We're going to do a Drupal camp, so www.drupalcamp.ai. We're going to have a Drupal AI camp in London on the 24th of October. Trying to build some kind of momentum there. And obviously freelygive.io is our company website. So I don't know if you want to plug anything.
Well, so I've just got a couple GitHub projects. I've been working on Drupal X, which is a fun Drupal starter. So I'll post some videos on that. I'm also posting a lot on the Drupal A. I know where everything's called Drupal AI, but I've got a GitHub Drupal AI project. That's where I'm posting on LinkedIn. And so if anybody's interested in, collaborating on any of those projects or just, trying them out, giving me feedback, that would be awesome.
Cool. Well, I'll see you around. And yeah, I definitely think we should do this again. Maybe bring some other people on. It was quite fun. We've got loads of questions to talk about next time. So I'll see you around.
That's awesome. Let's do it. Nice meeting you.